Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's network computing webinar, Stop Reacting and Start Defending, the revolutionary power of full content inspection, sponsored by Trinity Cyber and broadcast by Informa Tech Target. I'm Michael Krieger with Network Computing. I'll be your moderator for today. And traditional networking security defenses and reactive security tools like firewalls, IPS, SASE, even AI-powered gateways only provide passive and today insufficient protection for our modern enterprise environments. Full content inspection, or FCI, represents a fundamental shift towards truly preventive cybersecurity, enabling organizations to identify and neutralize malicious activity in real time before it even reaches the network. And that's what we're going to talk about today. On that note, I'm excited to introduce our speakers today. I'm joined by John Fraser, VP of Strategy at Trinity Cyber, and Elisha Lung, Senior Security Solutions Engineer at Trinity Cyber. And gentlemen, thank you both for coming on today.
Thanks for having us.
Terrific. So before I hand it over to our speakers, I just want to remind our audience of a couple of logistical things. First of all, this webinar is interactive. At the bottom of your screen, there are buttons you can click to learn more about our speakers, download a copy of the slides, share the webinar via social media outlets, and participate in the Q&A session that takes place at the end of our presentation. You can also use the Q&A area to let us know if you're experiencing any technical issues, and our team will do our best to assist you. Okay, let's get to it. John, over to you.
Thanks again, Michael, and appreciate being here and looking forward to the webinar today. So again, John Fraser, Vice President of Strategy here at Trinity Cyber, along my cyber team, my cybercrime partner here. Elisha Lung is along for the ride as well. We're going to do a little bit of a multi-part presentation here where I'll go through a large scenario with a large retailer you may or may not heard of, and then kind of talk through that a little bit about how proactive and reactive defenses are different in the cybersecurity space and how you can improve that with full content inspection. And then I'm going to turn it over to Elisha, who's going to really jump in and show you what full content inspection looks like in real time and live. And then we'll dive deeper into a couple other examples of things that we're seeing in the wild that full content inspection is able to stop while others can't. And then we'll go back in and I'll have Elisha dive into those examples as well. So again, really looking forward to today's session. And I really wanted to kick it off with just a quick poll question, just to kind of get the audience participation and kind of see where we're at. So what I'm interested in, what I think the team at Trinity Cyber is interested in, is what best describes, for those who are in attendance today, what best describes your current security strategy? Are you primarily reactive or post-incident response, mix of reactive and proactive, so kind of a little bit of both? Do you have a strong emphasis on proactive or preventative defense, or are you unsure of evaluating other options? And I'll give everybody a few moments here just to kind of plug that in, but I wanted to lead with those questions just to kind of see where the audience stands as far as their current strategy.
And while we wait for our audience members, what has been your experience? Are you seeing? People, have tended to be reactive. Is that still the case for the most part?
I think there's a shift, but you still see a lot of solutions that are, detect and respond. We've all heard of the MDRs, the XDRs, the NDRs, where you're seeing something and then you're trying to go and triage it and stop it. And I think the pendulum is starting to swing in the other direction, where you really need something that's proactive, that's doing something in line. And I think that's ultimately where full content inspection comes in.
Great, thanks for that.
All right, well, it looks like we got a pretty good audience participation, so I'm going to go ahead and hit next here to see what our results are. So kind of as expected, a little across the board, some unsure or still evaluating, some still a mix of maybe reactive and proactive, and that's kind of what Michael and I were just alluding to right before this. Some with a strong emphasis on proactive and preventive defense, and that's great. And then, there's still a large group, I think, that are primarily reactive. So kind of expected here across the board. And a lot of that can largely depend on the sophistication of your organization or the vertical that you're in, what's available to you as far as what's in your cybersecurity stack. So with that, I wanted to kind of transition and talk about a recent event that we saw back in April. It was actually Easter weekend. So again, to kind of put you in the space of Marks and Spencer, let's imagine it's Easter weekend 2025. Marks and Spencer is one of the largest UK and most iconic retailers, gearing up for a busy holiday. They're heading into the holiday weekend. Orders are rolling in. Retail stores are packed. Payments are flowing. the supply chain's humming, everything's going great, and then everything stops. And what effect does that have on the organization as they scramble? They're trying to figure out what's happening. Well, come to find out, they've been a victim of a ransomware attack. And largely, this is the result of having a reactive cybersecurity posture. This wasn't a 0-day. This wasn't a mystery exploit. This wasn't a known. This was a known adversary using known tactics, and they still got through. The adversary here was Scattered Spider, notorious hackers that have now been linked to this campaign and this ransomware attack. And ultimately, it was something that may have been preventable, but unfortunately, it got through, as we know many ransomware attacks do in this day and age, and it wreaked havoc on probably one of the busiest commercial retail days of the year for Marks and Spencer. So had a huge impact, and we'll get a little bit more into what that means going forward. But obviously hit the news. This is a publicly traded company, so has a broad effect among shareholders, among retailers, among consumers, and then of course amongst the organization and its employees as well. So no small feat as far as trying to react to this, trying to triage and getting through a ransomware attack and dealing with the blows that it deals an organization like itself, like Marks and Spencer. But what's come out since then in the last kind of few weeks is that this may not have just been an effect of the architecture, the cyber architecture of the retailer themselves. It's now becoming aware that this may have been something that was supply chain driven and may have led to an infiltration by this attacking security group into Marks and Spencer. So it brings up an even broader range of issues and questions around how do I keep my organization and my assets from getting compromised? And it can lead to things like even third-party or supply chain attacks that then lead to that domino effect of it getting into your network. Here we have TSC was investigating on their own to see if they may have been a cause of the breach. So really, the proactive security that we're going to talk about today doesn't just affect or have to be in place in front of the organization itself, but it has to go through the entire supply chain. And we've heard time and time again, supply chain security is kind of the new buzzword in the industry. But here's a very clear example of where that may have affected an organization like M&S. So I wanted to point that out as kind of the ever-changing news, and the more that we're finding out about this attack, that this may in fact have been caused by something even within the supply chain and then filtered down to the organization itself. So important distinction and notification to make there as well. So what kind of financial impact has this had on Marks and Spencer? So of course, this is something that's still developing, but in the early days of the attack, going back 6-8 weeks ago, the company was losing approximately just under $20 million a week. Their annual profits took about a $40 million initial hit from the ransomware attack that basically shut down and locked out all of their online and retail purchasing. And immediately after the event, they saw a market value drop by almost $1 billion. And that was basically overnight. And I'm sure that they'll be able to recover that, but it also shakes the foundation of your institutional investors, of your individual investors as well, and obviously has a larger impact on the market and the other retailers in the industry. So broad financial impact, as we can imagine with ransomware. A lot of times we just say, okay, the ransomware is the bounty to be paid, but there's an implicit impact across the value of the organization that goes beyond the ransomware payout or the ransomware bounty. And you can see those effects clearly here. So what does this truly mean? I could have gone into Google and typed in ransomware in the news feed and gotten a plethora of examples just like this. And they would have been timely, they would have been relevant, and we could have just gone down the list and picked any one of these. And this isn't to pick on M&S or any other organization, but I think it really leans to the fact that existing cybersecurity defenses are failing. What we're doing now today with our cybersecurity stack and what we're doing from a preventive security measure, which is generally more reactive, is just not working. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this was not a 0-day. This wasn't an unknown exploit. This is something that could have affected any organization across the world if it had been taken in the right steps and the proper protections weren't in place. So I think we can all agree that today, we're still dealing with attacks that are getting through. We're still triaging. We're still dealing with alerts. And ultimately, those things are just adding up, and we're trying to play a game of catch up. So M&S, like many companies, relied on security tools that detect threats after they land, flooding teams with alerts, forcing them into cleanup mode once the damage is already done. But what if we were able to flip that? What if M&S had stopped the attack mid-session before ransomware ever reached the endpoint? What if the malicious behavior was modified in transit silently before it could do harm? And what we've kind of depicted here is kind of the idea of a firewall and all the alerts and things that go along with things like traditional firewalls. I can kind of consider these like a tattletale. It's telling you something after the fact, and then you're having to go and deal with it on the back end. You have to spin up resources. You have to filter through what's real and what's not. And it really becomes a challenge. And as one of my colleagues said, it's like reading yesterday's paper to get today's news. A reactive cybersecurity posture is just not the way that we can continue to deal with even sophisticated hackers and attackers and nation state actors, as we'll see. And we'll get into that a little bit more here in a few minutes. So again, I kind of wanted to pause here now that we've covered some information and I've kind of laid the groundwork for what we're going to talk about today. But from the audience's perspective, I want to get an idea from everyone on how often your team is overwhelmed with these alerts or just simply unable to keep up with cybersecurity triaging, so event triaging, or where you think you might have an incident that you're going to track down. Is this something that's happening daily, where if you have a SOC, your SOC team is inundated? Is it a weekly occurrence? Is it only occasionally? Does it never happen? Maybe you feel like you've got everything under control, or maybe you're an organization that maybe doesn't see as many alerts. But I'd like to get an input at this point from folks in attendance today to just kind of see where things stand. And I'll give everybody just a minute or two to kind of respond here, and then we'll kind of go through what those results might look like. Just see some answers rolling in here. So again, you know, if you have a large team, how often do you feel like they are getting inundated with these type of things where you're maybe having to add headcount or utilize resources that you normally wouldn't for situations like this? That's really what we're looking at. Is your team constantly having to triage things that are out of band or out of bounds, you know, that you might have to deal with, that are putting business continuity and other things at risk? All right. Well, it looks like we got pretty good audience participation on this one, so let's see what the results look like. All right, so kind of again, both sides of the spectrum. So I think, you know, probably organizations that are, you know, maybe seen as more of a threat or more of an impact are seeing kind of that daily, which is important because when you have resources dedicated to this and you're getting inundated with alerts or trying to keep up with triaging, a daily occurrence of this is kind of insurmountable in some ways. And then, of course, if something like a Marks and Spencer incident happens, then it's all hands on deck. Everybody's hair is on fire. We're really trying to struggle through that. And then at the other end, yes, there's occasional. But again, is that something that we really want to be dealing with? Let's take the retailer, for example. If we're occasionally dealing with these threats and they're kind of inundating us with alerts, but that's happening during a holiday season or say during a busy season for your organization, again, that's something that's untenable that I really think could be overcome with some of the new solutions in the marketplace today. Thanks for the feedback on that one. So here's where I'd like to introduce the concept of full content inspection. What we're looking to do at this point is not just to detect that threats and be reactive, but take a proactive approach to network security and beyond. And that's what we're calling, and Michael alluded to this early on, to full content inspection, or FCI. And basically what that is a full inline, full internet session parsing solution that works bidirectionally to look at, remediate, and remove threats in line as they happen. So to dive a little bit deeper into that, what I've basically done is take a visualization of a network session. What full content inspection, or FCI, is able to do is intercept and neutralize in real time inside the session before anything malicious ever hits your network. There's no alerts because this is all action taken in real time, and there's no noise. Everything that you'll see, and Elisha will show this as part of the demo, is something that we're taking action on in real time. And so if you look at the fully parsed internet session, what you can see here highlighted in red is what's been deemed malicious by a solution like full content inspection. And what it's able to do then is completely neutralize and remove that from a session in real time. Again, what this is going to ultimately give you is taking clean traffic and basically delivering clean traffic to its endpoint after the malicious threat has been removed from that session. So full content inspection in its core is going to give you three key tenets. It's going to give you more accurate and enduring detection, near zero false positives, and we'll talk about why that is a little bit later on. And then it's going to give you continuous protection and less disruption. Because this is sitting outside of your organization and doing what we're calling full content inspection, or fully parsing and remediating threats in line, it's going to allow you to continue business continuity without having to worry about alert, remediation, triaging, and the things that we've kind of talked about previously. So I've talked quite a bit about what full content inspection is, but let's see how that relates to what David Bianco's referred to as the pyramid of pain. David Bianco is a great cyber threat researcher who came up with this several years ago and has allowed us to use it for these sort of presentations. And again, this is the cybersecurity pyramid of pain. And at the bottom of it in orange, you'll see kind of the typical indicators of compromise, or the typical ways that threat actors use an advantage or use these type of things like hash values, IP addresses, domain names to their advantage to thwart defenses. They're inexpensive for attackers to evade. They provide known signatures or indicators, but they're ever evolving. And at the top of the pyramid, the top two layers is what you have, which typically gives the defender an advantage. And if you can focus something like full content inspection on those tools, those tactics, techniques, and procedures, it's very difficult and costly for hackers to overcome, because they don't have the simple way of pivoting from a different domain name or a different IP address or spinning up a number of different hash values. If you can go higher up the pyramid to those TTPs and those tools and take those adversaries on, that makes it much more difficult for them to gain an advantage over the cybersecurity solutions that we're seeing today. Elisha is going to talk a little bit more about that as we get into the demo. But this ultimately gives you proactive security designed for the way attackers really operate. So we're not going to talk about chasing the alerts or deploying more dashboards. We're going to talk about what happens when you stop threats ultimately before they start. We're going to talk about, and we've kind of talked about the phrase, and you'll see this on our website, about auto-correcting the internet. So let's see what that looks like in real time. So what I'm going to do at this point is turn it over to Elisha. He's going to give you an idea of what full content inspection looks like in real time. Everything that we do here is actually live, and it's just going to show you a really complete picture going beyond just PowerPoint and slides about what full content inspections looks like, and as he goes through an example and kind of what we can see here. So Elisha, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, John. So as John said, I'm Elisha Lung, the Senior Security Solutions Engineer here at Trinity Cyber, and I'm looking forward to showing you guys a couple examples of really how full content inspection works in line in real time, and the data that we both see and provide as well. So what I have here up on the screen is the Trinity Cyber portal. Now, just to give you a little bit of background, and so you can really get your bearings of what we're looking at. The portal is where we notify our customers of what we've detected on their network, with the action we've taken to mitigate that thing that we detected, and then all of the rich information and context surrounding that event, should they choose to look at it. Now, keeping in mind that, of course, because we are proactive and because we take actions outside the edge of the network to mitigate threats, that, as John mentioned, we don't alert. Right, we are sending simply notifications of what we've detected and stopped, and it's really up to our customers and partners on whether or not they need to look into those or not, given that there is no action further that they need to take. So just so you can get an idea of the information that we provide, looking at the main dashboard, we will show the top threats prevented on the network. You can sort this by all of the relevant metrics: MITRE ATT&CK tagging, CVE, exploit name or type, etc. On the right-hand side, you will see the latest threats prevented. This is kind of a snapshot or a last 10 of the last actions that we've taken to prevent something malicious on the traffic. You will see, scrolling down, the events by day on the network. So the amount of actions we take per day, the total hits in the last, I believe that's the last 30 days of time, or no, the last 7 days actually on this one, as sorted by protocol. You'll see the usage, so the amount of data that's pushing to and through Trinity Cyber, and the events by direction. So we see inbound and outbound on the traffic, and we take action both inbound and outbound. The last thing you'll see here down at the bottom is this scatter plot distribution of the threats prevented, which is really a good way to just see what particular threats are kind of top of mind on your particular network, what might be very active in a particular day, or just get an idea of kind of the overall landscape of what's hitting on the network. Now, there's one other thing that I will show, which is our metrics page. This is just kind of a network traffic monitor of the throughput that's going to and through us. Just a good, convenient way to check the amount of traffic that's going through Trinity Cyber, how we're seeing that traffic. In the case of an outage or anything, we will see that generally even before a customer's ISP, which is pretty cool as well and pretty useful. So with that being said, I'm actually going to dive right into the demo. And as John mentioned, I'm going to do an example of steganography today. I think this is a really cool and good example to do in this short period of time. And it will really show you the depth of our detection and the specific actions that we can take and why we take them as well. Now, steganography is a technique that attackers use that's incredibly common. And in very simple terms, it's a technique of appending bad data to good data or benign data. In this case, it's a remote access Trojan, a Windows executable that's been appended to this particular PNG image. And it's a very straightforward process. It takes a second to create a file like this, just to append anything really to a PNG image. And you can use your computer or AI to spin up thousands of these in no time at all. And so just to give you an idea of what I'm actually talking about, and I know we don't want to get super technical here, but I just want to show some kind of behind the scenes information on these type of events, right? I've grabbed the hex dump of this image, and if I scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see right here, and I've highlighted it here. It might be small, but you can take my word for it, that under the highlighted area, it says IEND. And that's what's known as the IEND chunk. It's the RFC defined end of image for a PNG file or an image file. And really, that's where the data should end, right? Obviously, it does not. There's this MZ, this Windows executable, and all this information that's tacked on the back of that image file. And that's our steganography technique in action, right? So we've got the picture, we've got where it's supposed to end, and then we've got the executable that's been tacked on the back of that. Now, if I were to download this image without full content inspection in place, this image, and let's see, with any security vendor other than the 8 that flag this particular file as malicious, that's going to download as intended. That executable is going to be on my machine, and now it can be potentially executed, correct? So straightforward process. We obviously do not want that on the machine. What I'm going to do is download this image. Now, this is truly a don't try this at home type of scenario, right? But what's going to happen when I download this image is that we are going to deconstruct that entire session. Full content inspection is going to parse that session, stage it in its kind of endpoint ready content. So as a PNG, it's going to detect that there's a malicious executable that's appended on the back of this image. It doesn't care what the executable is or what the image is or anything like that. It cares that that technique of steganography is being used. And then it's going to take the action, the default action, to remove that appended data and deliver the clean image. And all of that happens in real time with sub-millisecond latency. So I'll go here. I'm going to click download file. I've got my file in my downloads folder. You can see it right here. And I can open it up, and I've got my little image. Now, I have no idea what anybody's going to use this particular little Chinese character looking image for. But let's say you need it for a paper, or you're going to a website that has it on it, right? As a user, all I know is I clicked download on that image, and I saw no latency or no delay in the time getting that image. There was no interruption to my workflow, right? I'm none the wiser that full content inspection is in place or that there's something malicious on that file. Now, a keen eye might notice that the file that I've just downloaded is about 3.8K, or sorry, the file that I've just been delivered is about 3.8K, whereas the file as I had just downloaded it, so before it went through full content inspection, is about 263K. So you can see right off the bat, something's changed about that file. But again, the average user is none the wiser. There was no delay, there was no interruption. They just clicked download, they got the image they wanted. Now, as a security team, as an admin, you may want to know, well, Trinity Cyber detected something, we took action to prevent it, and here's what happened, right? And that's really where our portal comes back in. So what I'll do first is I'll actually drag this file into our file parser. Now, the file parser is a unique tool that we include in our portal that allows you to drag and drop any file, and it will immediately parse out the file, show you the contents of the file, as well as if there's anything malicious in it, and give you kind of a graphic representation of that file structure. So in this case, I'm just doing it really quickly so that I can grab that hex dump, and I scroll to the bottom, and you'll see that that file now ends at that IAN chunk, right? So where that image originally, before I downloaded it, before it went through full content inspection, had that appended executable on it, now it doesn't. It ends at the IAN chunk as intended. It's just a clean PNG. Where we're actually notifying you of that activity is within our activity tab itself, right? And so if we see here, looks like we've already had a few events happen even in that last couple minutes since I downloaded it. But we've got a new notification here for a PNG file with appended data beyond the trailer that's been prevented on-prem, obviously because I'm on the Trinity Cyber network right now. And if we take a look at it, for every single notification that we, or for every single action that we take, as soon as we take that action, we populate the portal with a notification like this of what we did, why we did it, and all the information relevant to it. So in this case, you'll see the description, which is kind of what I explained earlier. You'll see our response. We removed the appended data from that PNG. You're going to see all the MITRE ATT&CK framework tagging that's relevant, all of the high-level session metadata that's relevant. You can see source IP, destination IP, host. In this case, it's coming from VirusTotal. And then also, in this particular case, actually two of our formulas, which are kind of our version of countermeasures. These are written in-house, and they're a detection and a corresponding action, detected something in this file. We detected both that existence of steganography and also that there was a malicious executable actually within that. And so we detected that, we removed that executable, we give you all the relevant data. Now, we have all this visibility into these sessions, and because of that, we really want to pass that along to you as well, should you choose or need or want to look at it, right? And we do that in two ways. The first is packet capture. As part of Trinity Cyber's offerings, we include full internet session PCAP that can be queried and downloaded directly from our portal, but also directly from events. You can, if I wanted to export the exact PCAP of that session when I downloaded the image, I could do that right from the event. The cooler way to take a look at this in my mind is with our Visualize tool. Now, again, this might be a little bit small, so I'll try to zoom in. But as you can see, really from network all the way down to file, we have a full graphic representation along with rich session metadata of every single thing that happened in that session when I downloaded that image. We can go through the IP information, through the TCP information, through the web response itself, all the way down to that PNG, which is red, obviously, because that's where we detected something malicious. And then within that, this dashed red PE, or portable executable, along with all of its sub-objects. And these are dashed because we've pruned those in flight, right? We've removed those in flight, delivered the clean PNG. Now, one other thing that I want to show really quickly before I jump into, or before I send it back to John, is that one, even though we remove that executable, we can still show the content and even download the content from the portal should you so choose to, let's say, sandbox that executable. But also we can take that executable and send it back to VirusTotal for analysis. And as you can see, the executable itself, when it's not tacked on the back of an image, has quite high detection. 51 out of 67 of these vendors are flagging that as malicious. But when someone took that file and they appended it to the back of this PNG image, let's see, its first submission was in 2015. So this particular hash has been in existence for at least a decade. That detection is still incredibly low at 8 out of 61. And really that's only because these 8 probably have this hash in their block list. And so if I were to take this hash and upload it to all the rest of these, and that number goes to 61 out of 61 for all the vendors detecting this particular hash as malicious, well, all an attacker has to do is change a pixel in the image or change something else in that font or in the PNG or whatever, and that hash is going to change, right? And then that detection is going to go right back down to probably 0 out of 61 because the security vendors need to go find that malicious hash again, add it to the block list, and detect it. Well, the reason I'm talking about that is because, as I mentioned earlier, with full content inspection, we don't care about all of those things, right? As John showed in the Pyramid of Pain, we are looking for those specific TTPs, those tactics, techniques, and procedures attackers are using, in this case, steganography. And so it doesn't matter what this hash is or what this image is or what executable is tacked on the back. What matters is they're using that technique of steganography. And we're going to see that, detect it, and take action to prevent it every single time. And that goes across the board. We're not just a file cleaner. We see anything in an internet session really from layer 3 to layer 7, and we can take action to mitigate anything within that as well. And so with that, I'm going to stop there and hand it back to John. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Elisha. One thing I did want to mention too, and then we'll get into our last and final poll question is, this is not just about image file or files or image files themselves. And we'll get into that in the second half of the presentation today. And actually, Elisha will show some other examples that go beyond just image files. Full content inspection is available, again, to fully parse full internet sessions. So that can include DNS poisoning, that can include JavaScript, something that's HTML script that's sitting on a website. So anything within that session can be fully inspected and remediated in line. The steganography example with the image file is just an easy way to show how this can happen in real time. But we'll get into a couple other examples here momentarily. So with that, I'd like to kind of ask our last poll question here for today, which is, how confident are you that your current defenses catch advanced threats before they cause damage? And of course, it's going to go from very confident, somewhat confident, not very confident at all. And I'd like to get a sense of, from the audience, after seeing just kind of a brief preview of full content inspection, what that kind of looks like from the audience perspective. Are we overly confident that we're stopping everything? Maybe we're somewhat confident, or maybe we're not confident at all, and we feel that we are in a very reactive posture where we're having to deal with things kind of after the fact. So love to get everybody's thoughts here. I'll give just a few moments for folks to get kind of their votes in. I see we've got a growing audience here in the webinar, which is great. So I'll just give everybody another couple minutes here or a couple of seconds here to get their votes in.
So, John, do you think we're typically more confident than we should be when it comes to cybersecurity?
That's always a great question. It's a fine line, right? There's the kind of the sky is falling mentality where you're always kind of feeling that everything is against you or working against you, and you're kind of having to play the game of catch up. But then there's the dangerous game of the other side of that, where you think everything's fine until something bad happens, and then you're playing that game of catch up. So I think it's organizationally based. I think it's organizationally buy-in based. But that's a great way and a great way to put it. And I think I've seen in my years of doing this both, where people feel like that what they've got is great, and on the other side of it, everybody's kind of always has their eye over their shoulder trying to stay ahead of the game.
And let me also remind everyone, you could submit your questions to our speakers at any time. We'll get to as many of them as we can after their presentation. And with that, John, back to you.
Great. And see, we've got quite a bit of responses here. So let's go into our poll response. So it looks like kind of the middle of the road here. So somewhat confident into not very confident. So again, I think it's back to Michael's question, a little bit of that fine line. You don't want to be overly confident and feel like you've got everything under control and your posture is as good as it's always going to be. But then you've got people again who are probably looking to constantly improve their cybersecurity posture and ensure that what they're doing is cutting edge, that they're using the best technologies, the best people, and the best resources to stay in that proactive posture. So thank you for those responses. So now, as my head flies in here, we're going to talk a little bit about a couple other examples that we've seen in the wild more recently. Steganography, as Elisha mentioned, has been around for as long as cybersecurity has been around. It's a tried and true tactic that adversaries are using. But I really wanted to focus on a couple examples of where we're seeing some newer ways that adversaries are getting into networks and infiltrating and doing the bad things that they're trying to do. So first one we're going to talk about is preventing click fix at the network edge. And I'll talk a little bit more about, for those unfamiliar, about what that means here in the upcoming slides. So basically what ClickFix is doing is tricking an internet user, and we've all kind of seen these screens where either it's a CAPTCHA or it's an accepting of cookies, or it's your machine has been compromised, click here to fix it, where basically just in a single click, you are opening yourselves up, or your organization or the device itself, to total data compromise. Basically what happens is attackers generate phishing HTML pages that trick users into pasting and running malicious commands. The HTML pages can automatically copy commands to the clipboard without user intervention and instruct the victim to paste and run them. These commands can lead to downloading malware such as information stealers, credential stealers. It can put malware on the network device that then can lock you out and create a ransomware scenario. So a lot of different ways that these can be affected, and we're seeing these more and more, as they've kind of developed in sophistication across the internet and across our users and across organizations. So, it's a simple click to verify, and then all of a sudden you've done exactly what the adversary wants, and you have a potential for being compromised. And what this basically looks like, again, is that it's simple code that's embedded in that web session that is getting through traditional cybersecurity defenses. These can be things that are, third-party scripts that are running on websites. These can be pop-up. So they come in a lot of different scenarios. And we've seen these a lot even in CAPTCHAs. So everybody knows the CAPTCHA game where you have to pretend that you're a human, or have to say that you're a human and you're not a bot. You click on all the stoplights in a picture. Full content inspection is able to remove these threats, these malicious JavaScript threats, from network sessions from any domain. It doesn't matter where you are going, what website you're visiting, what the pop-up is. Every single time we're going to see these because they use the same tactics and techniques and procedures over and over again. And that really leads to a super low false positive rate, because once you can identify the background entity or the code or the script or what is being obfuscated in that session and identify it and be able to remove it, you can do it typically every single time. These are parts of newly emerging ClickFix or Kontuki campaigns that full content inspection has recently and frequently prevented across multiple networks. The events above contain similar base64 encoded PowerShell scripts, and Elisha is going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like moving forward here. But this is a very relevant campaign that we've seen used very broadly with nation-state actors, basement hackers, you name it. It's very easy for them to deploy, and we'll talk a little bit more about how they can even change those using AI here in a minute. So again, you click and compromised. And what's interesting is now that they're using third-party branding and logos to make these look like anything else. And I'm sure we've all gone to websites and immediately we accept the cookies because we're sick of the pop-ups. We see them on every single website. You click it, you think nothing of it, and you move about your day, doing whatever you're going to be doing on the web. Well, the adversaries are basically taking that and basically putting things like Google Chrome logos, Facebook logos, PDF, you name it, making them look like CAPTCHAs to basically, again, obfuscate that these are malicious attempts to gain access to your network or to your devices. The domains within the PowerShell scripts are easy to turn up and take down. They've become more sophisticated by varying what is displayed to the user, as you can see here. And the results of their complex virtualizations and sandboxing typically evades and sandboxing evasion logic. So again, even if you were to sandbox this and pull it out of band, one, that's going to slow down your business, create business disruption, but it's also something that's going to take time if you need to go and do something on the internet or anywhere within an internet session and do the things that you need to do to keep that business continuity. These can range from scareware pop-ups, as I mentioned, browser hijacking, and just downloading additional malware executables. So we are just seeing a swath of these across domains. I typically don't like to share the domain names, but I can tell you this from what I've seen. These are hitting websites like state and local municipalities, large enterprises that are unaware that they're running these sorts of scripts. So we're seeing these across any sort of website in a very prolific fashion. So what does it ultimately look like from full content inspection? Well, Elisha kind of already showed this. So on the left, you've got kind of what I call the matrix view, the obfuscated hex. This is the bits and bytes that are going through an internet session. What we're able to do is de-obfuscate and parse that text into kind of this breadcrumb trail of the full internet session. And what's interesting about full content inspection, what I think another thing that separates it from other solutions is the way that we can actually take action on those malicious nodes within a network session. So for example, here we've got a replace. So I can basically take what's in that network session, identify what's malicious, and replace it with something else. A good example would be if you were to go to a website that was malicious, you could then replace that malicious code with a warning to say, hey, this site has been compromised. You may want to go somewhere else. Additionally, you could modify it. You could turn that malicious code into anything you want. To use the old internet meme, we could take that malicious code and literally pop up a picture of a cat if we wanted to. That's the value of full content inspection and the ability to parse and reconstruct full internet sessions. And then lastly, you can remove it. And by removing it, I don't mean blocking the session. What I mean is removing what's malicious from the internet session itself, repackaging that session, and then again, sending that clean traffic along its way. So allowing you business continuity to be able to continue what you're doing, what your workflow is, without disruption to that internet session. So I wanted to shift gears a little bit and just talk about how, in the same vein, attackers are now using AI to turn verse into evasion. And I'll talk about what that means. So one recent example that we've seen is using large language models to write PowerShell scripts to change signatures or hash values. We're seeing song lyrics, poems in code because it's easy for an LLM to produce. So an easy example is go to your favorite GPT, ask it to create a PowerShell script that evades detection with song lyrics added as comments. Every time I generate one of those prompts, it's going to generate a new script, which is going to generate a new hash value, which now is potentially going to evade detection. And I can say, hey, ChatGPT, do this 1,000 times. And I'm going to copy and paste those, and I'm going to put them on websites that I have access to. And now we're playing a game of catch up against all those hash values that have been generated by AI. And the reason that they're using things like song lyrics and poems is it's very easy for a large language model to interpret that and generate the outcomes and the codes with poems and song lyrics and movie scripts, what you name it. So very easy way for attackers to use AI in generating these PowerShell scripts to, again, create a new signature and create a new hash value, which is, again, the bottom of that pyramid that we're constantly fighting against, where the defenders have an advantage. And for an attacker, again, it creates that new signature. It makes it hard or almost impossible for traditional cybersecurity solutions to keep up with. And that's why it's really important for threat defenders to focus, again, on those tactics, techniques, and procedures, and not indicators of compromise. So again, just to show this live, I'd love to turn it back over to Elisha to show a couple of examples, not only of ClickFix, but also where we're actually seeing AI used to create some of these signatures and some of these hash values in full content inspection across some of our customers. So Elisha, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, John. Just pulling my screen up here. So exactly, yes. Like you mentioned, I've got a couple examples of ClickFix and Kong2k that I want to show really quickly, just to give you kind of an idea of what we've detected actually in live traffic, how we're looking at that traffic, and the kind of precise actions that we can take to mitigate these threats, right? So in this particular case, this is a real example of a ClickFix event on traffic, again, that we detected and prevented. As you can see in this case, we're detecting the malware downloader. So for each of these, kind of as I showed earlier, there's a description. So ClickFix is a technique used to inject a fake CAPTCHA web page on compromised websites. And you'll see our response, right? We replaced a malicious PowerShell script with a benign text file in this case, preventing the malware or exploit delivery. So what I'm going to do really quickly on this one is actually just jump right to visualize. I'll go to this dashed red application octet stream, hop in the content, and then I'm going to show the raw version of this. And so what we can actually see in this case is that within that HTTP response is kind of the entire script that they're running. And if we look at it, right, you'll see that there's this first 12 images. And what these make up is really that exact same display that John was just showing. That's kind of that fake CAPTCHA, right? You'll have 12 images. It'll say, click the one with the traffic light, and they're all traffic lights, right? And so the unsuspecting user clicks all 12 of them. Well, as you can see, if I scroll down in this, that each one of those images corresponds to a file, a downloader, an executable, something in this case. And so as the user clicks through all 12 of those traffic light images, or I'm actually not even sure what the image used in this case was, they're actually running this entire program suite for the bad actor for them on their machine. And so they're giving them privileges, they're running their executables, etc., all the way down. And that's something that we detect right in line. We replace this entire file with just a benign text file. And what that does is it means that exploit is never going to get to the end user. Full content inspection is replacing that, so it never gets to the end user. But not only that, the attacker is not going to see that their connection was closed or that this was blocked. They're just going to think, well, it worked as normal, or it looks like it worked as normal, but nothing happened. My files didn't execute, something didn't happen, whatever. And now they're going back to square one and trying to rebuild their program because they think it doesn't even work, right? And so it's a little bit of added confusion that we can throw in to kind of mess with them from our end while we mitigate their threat. Now, the next example I want to show is another example of this Kongtuke fake CAPTCHA injected script tag. And now, what you'll see here is that it's, again, the Kongtuke specifically is the downloader itself for these ClickFix CAPTCHAs. In this case, we remove one or more malicious Kongtuke pages from the network, preventing delivery to the target system. So again, you'll see here, I know John mentioned not really wanting to out the domains, but if any of you were planning on going to this Style by Emily Henderson website anytime soon, I'd suggest maybe giving it some time. But what we can see here, right, is that we have, again, this HTTP response to this HTML page. That HTML page is dashed red because that's where we detected the Kongtuke downloader. If we go to the content, and actually, again, we'll go to the raw version of it, it actually just generally looks like a standard WordPress website. And so what they've done is they've taken somebody's WordPress website, they've injected this script into it. And actually what it is it's this exact script right here. And all that it does, right, is this particular one is going to cause the next stage of ClickFix. It's just filtering to see if you're the right victim for them, and then they're going to pass you on to the next script and kind of keep going from there, right? And again, we see that, we take action to remove it, we mitigate that threat in line with full content inspection. Now, the last example I want to show you is a little bit cooler because it's actually going to show you the full kind of ClickFix suite, right? And so in this case, again, we're actually having two formulas that are detecting on this session: a clipboard hijacking lure and that Kongtuke fake CAPTCHA downloader. Now, that clipboard hijacking is kind of what John showed earlier, where they're saying, hey, you need to verify yourself, press Windows run the PowerShell with admin privileges, copy this thing into it, hit enter. And now, again, we would all kind of hope, I think, that our users and our peers would not fall for that. But obviously, they're running this because people do, and I think we all know that this is more effective than it should be, right? People see, oh yeah, whatever, I'll click through this, I'll hit copy, I'll hit paste, I'll hit run, and all of a sudden they've given admin privileges or downloaded something malicious, and it's over, right? Now, in this case, we've detected not only that clipboard hijacking, but the Kong2K fake capture downloader itself on this Butte-Tin website. And if we take a look, actually, I'll go to your URL scan first. I've thrown the Butte-Tin website in there just to see if it has a verdict for it. And as you can see, Google Safe Browsing isn't detecting anything for this website. The URL scan isn't detecting anything malicious on this page. And so nobody clearly really knows yet that there's something malicious on that website. But if we take a look again at the visualize, we'll see this entire, again, HTML tree, of what that web page is. We can see in the HTML itself, we've detected something malicious there, right? And that's the downloader itself. And if we look at this dashed red script here, that's actually where we see the fake clipboard hijacking lure. And both of these are pruned in real time from that session. So the user can actually still navigate that website without being affected by those malicious scripts. So what we're going to do first, I'll actually look in the content of this script. And again, if I jump down to the raw and go to the bottom, you'll see some text here. And what this looks like is, I don't know, so a snippet from a book or a poem or something. And this is really where we're suspecting AI is being used to generate scripts or comments to obfuscate code, right? They're just using AI to grab a piece of a song or a book or a poem, and they're putting that around scripts and using that to obfuscate it, which is a very effective thing that attackers use. The other thing I want to show is actually that we see there's a PNG in this HTML page. And if I grab the hex dump of that PNG, I copy that to my clipboard. And what I'll do is I'll actually just go to CyberChef, which is a pretty cool kind of decoding tool. And I'm going to render that hex dump as an image. And you'll see I'll paste it here. And what we have here is a Cloudflare image. And so what they've done is they've just gone to Google Images or whatever, copied Cloudflare's logo, and they're popping that right into their little pop-up, the verification pop-up, saying, hey, it's Cloudflare, you need to verify, do this, right? And exactly to John's point, they can throw these in their sites super easily. They can add these to the verification, and then users click on it, think, oh, that's legitimate. It's Cloudflare. I'll click on it, do what it asks, and they've been compromised, right? Full content inspection detects that in line in real time, mitigates all of the threats, and then simply tells you what it's done, how it did it, and why we did it, right? So with that, I'll hand it back to John. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Elisha. That was really insightful, and I appreciate kind of digging through the examples that I went through. So just to kind of wrap for the group, I know we've got a few minutes left, but full content inspection really allows you to auto-correct your internet. I know we've got some questions here that I want to get to as well. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Michael as we kind of go through Q&A and wrap up.
And thank you, John and Elisha, for that great presentation, by the way. Now on to our Q&A. As a reminder to participate, just type your question into the text box located to the left of the presentation window, or click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If we're not able to answer all the questions were submitted today, we'll be sure to share them with our presenters who can get back to you offline. So let's start with a question from Tony, who wants to know, is the full content inspection symmetric? Does it check if a client on the inside is doing something that they should not be doing?
That's a great question. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but we talked kind of here an example about simply inbound, because it's always easier to show that in a demonstration. But yes, full content inspection is going to do both inbound and outbound inspection. So a good example is you take your laptop home, maybe it's off network, maybe you're not running any sort of protected VPN. And the example I always use is your child or somebody at home thinks they're downloading a version of Minecraft and it ends up having malware in it. All of a sudden you bring that computer or that device back to your network, your organization network, you open it up, and that machine starts to try and do things that it shouldn't. Command and control, ransomware, data exfiltration. Because that is now an outbound request that's going over the internet and being able to be inspected, we would see and stop that through full content inspection and be able to basically remediate that. So it is bidirectional or symmetrical to I think it was Tony's question, but that is a great question.
Okay, thanks for that. Keep the questions coming. This one from Charles. who wants to know, how does Trinity Cyber achieve false positives below 1%?
Yeah, I think Elisha showed this a little bit in the demo. Because we're focused on those tactics and techniques and procedures versus indicators of compromise, it allows us to achieve a supremely low false positive rate. I'm talking less than 0.01%, and that's a measured false positive across our customers. And that's simply because we are able to, because we're identifying again every single time information behind an IN chunk for an image file, or JavaScript that's potentially malicious in a website, and able to remove or replace or modify that in line every time, it gives us an extremely low false positive rate. In addition to that, our formulas are constantly being updated and just basically brought up to speed with the latest threats. We have a full threat intelligence and threat hunt team, and actually a threat triage team that are constantly building and modifying these formulas to maintain that extremely low false positive rate.
Thanks for that. Keep the questions coming. We have time for maybe one or two more. This one's from Evan, who wants to know, how does full content inspection handle 0 days?
Yeah, another great question. I'll go back to kind of an old example of Log4j, but that's one I think everybody is familiar with. We get advance notice typically of vulnerabilities, basically through our threat intelligence team and the partnerships that we have in the community. But to give you a real world example, Log4j, for example, we had a formula developed and written within 2 hours of release of that 0 day. And that formula got deployed across all of our customers, and they were immediately protected against Log4j as soon as that formula was developed, and only literally hours after that was made publicly known. We have a number of examples like that. Avanti Pulse Secure was a VPN 0 day that came out a few months ago. Same thing, just a couple of hours for our team to develop a formula, and all of our customers are fully protected, whether they're using Pulse Secure or not.
And I think we have time for one last question. Let me squeeze this one in. Lloyd would like to know, what does full content inspection do to my traffic latency?
Yeah, that's always the question, right? Is because you're doing this in real time, live, you're not sandboxing. It's always a question that I think begs answering. And luckily, the development team that built full content inspection for Trinity Cyber did a wonderful job of building these parsers that can act very basically with sub-millisecond latency. So we are able to fully parse an internet session, and you kind of saw it when Elisha downloaded the PNG file earlier. It went from a 365K file to a 3K file in the same speed that you would do any normal type of file download. So we're talking sub-millisecond latency, which is not going to, delay or slow down any sort of internet session. You're not going to see any, this video call for me, for example, this webinar is actually going through full content inspection on my device. So just shows you the lack of latency that you can see with full content inspection.
And with that, that's all the time we have for questions today. I want to thank you, John and Elisha. Network Computing appreciates your time and expertise on today's topic. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Trinity Cyber, as well as to all of you in the audience. We appreciate your attention and participation in the polls and in the Q&A. Within the next 24 hours, you will receive a personalized follow-up email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand. Please feel free to invite your colleagues and peers who might not have been able to join us for the live event today. Finally, this webinar is copyright 2025 by Informatech Target. Presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by Network Computing and Trinity Cyber, and our speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. On behalf of our guests at Trinity Cyber and the Network Computing team, I'm Michael Krieger. Thanks for your time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.